I knew something was wrong the moment the birthday candles started melting backwards. I don't mean they flickered or burned strangely or dripped wax faster than normal, no. I mean the flames literally pulled inward, shrinking the candles from the top down in reverse, like time had decided to run the wrong way for just a moment. And everyone else standing around the table didn't notice. Not a single person looked confused. Not a single eyebrow lifted. They smiled, they clapped, they cheered. Their voices rising all around me in a warm chorus I'd known my whole life. But me? My stomach dropped like I just stepped off a cliff. That birthday, my birthday, was supposed to be normal, quiet, fun. A rare moment where the people closest to me gathered in one place. I had walked into that night expecting laughter, cake, and nothing more complicated than blowing out candles and opening a few presents. But the moment those candles pulled in on themselves, something in the room shifted. It was small, silent, nearly invisible. But I felt it. It was like the air thickened just a little. Like a shadow behind me stretched an inch too far. Like someone I couldn't see was standing way too close, breathing in the same breath I was trying to take. I remember blinking hard, trying to convince myself it was nothing. A trick of the light, a glitch in my brain, maybe a side effect of being overtired. But when I blinked, the room didn't reset. Instead, the world around me froze for a split second, like someone had hit pause. The singing cut out. The smiling faces around the table seemed stuck mid-expression. And I swear, the melted candle wax that had pooled at the base of the cake rippled outward, like something underneath was shifting. Then everything snapped back to normal. The voices, the clapping, the warmth, all of it resumed seamlessly, as if nothing had happened. My mom leaned forward with her camera. My best friend bumped my shoulder, grinning. Someone shouted, "Make a wish." But my wish had already been made. I just wanted the night to go back to feeling safe. I tried to laugh it off. I even forced a smile, because it felt like everyone was waiting for me to do something. And the silence stretching around me was getting too thick. I inhaled, blew out the candles, and watched the smoke twist upward in a way smoke shouldn't move. As if it was being pulled by invisible fingers toward the darkest corner of the room. My skin crawled. My heart hammered. And for a split second I thought I saw something in that corner. Something tall, thin, unmoving, watching. I blinked again and it was gone. Or maybe it was never really there. Or maybe everyone else had simply learned to pretend they couldn't see it. That was the moment I realized something had been waiting for me. Not at the party. Not outside. Not lurking in the shadows of the old house. It had been waiting specifically for my birthday. And that backward burning candle trick? That was just the first sign. I didn't know it then. But the night was about to unravel into something I would never forget. Something that would make me question reality, memory, and even the people I thought I knew. Because sometimes birthdays don't bring joy. Sometimes they bring attention from something that should never notice you at all. Before everything went wrong, my life was painfully normal. I'm Evan, 24 years old, living in a quiet little suburb outside Portland. I work remotely as a graphic designer, which basically means I spend most days hunched over my laptop, half powered by caffeine and half by deadlines I pretend don't exist until the last second. I'm not dramatic. I'm not imaginative. I'm not the kind of person who sees ghosts and shadows or jumps at every noise in the house. If anything, my friends say I'm too grounded, too rational, too boring. And honestly, I always took that as a compliment. The night everything happened, the night of the party, it was my birthday. A small one. Nothing special. A casual Friday gathering around 7:30 p.m., right as the sun dipped behind the neighborhood rooftops, and the world slipped into that comfortable blue hour that makes everything feel soft and gentle. My parents had invited me over for dinner, something they'd done every year since I moved out. My mom insisted birthdays should feel warm. Her exact words. Dad handled the grilling. My younger sister was already decorating the dining room when I walked in, hanging cheap streamers she bought from the dollar store because she said, "A celebration needs color." The whole house smelled like pine candles and seasoning from the grill, familiar scents, the kind that wrap around you like a blanket. I remember standing there in the doorway taking in all of it. The house. The warmth. My family. It felt safe. Comfortably predictable. Even when my two closest friends, Marcus and Lena, showed up carrying a ridiculous amount of snacks, the atmosphere didn't change. They were loud, laughing, teasing me as usual. It was the kind of noise that fills a home in the best possible way. Nothing strange. Nothing heavy. Nothing even slightly out of place. Just a normal evening. A normal birthday. A normal life. We spent the first hour talking about work, gossiping about people we went to school with, and arguing about which horror movies were overrated. Ironic now, thinking back. I was relaxed, leaning back in my usual chair at the dining table, sipping a soda and mindlessly scrolling through texts from coworkers who wished me happy birthday. I wasn't anxious. I wasn't distracted. I wasn't expecting anything remotely unusual to happen. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet. Cars parked neatly along the street, porch lights flickering on one by one as the night settled in. The kind of peaceful silence you don't really notice until it's gone. Inside, the soft hum of the dishwasher mixed with the sound of my sister humming as she set up the cake on the counter. Even the weather felt perfect. Cool air drifting in through the slightly open window, carrying that early spring freshness that only lasts a week or two before everything gets too hot again. It felt like the sort of night where nothing bad could happen. And I was in the perfect headspace to enjoy it. No stress. No worries. No nagging gut feelings or strange instincts. Just stillness. I kept thinking how lucky I was, how birthdays as an adult usually feel disappointing, but this one actually felt meaningful. Felt like home. The kind of moment you tuck away because you know you'll want to remember it someday. There wasn't a single warning sign. Not a single thing that hinted at what was coming. If someone had told me that within an hour I would be questioning my own reality, I would have laughed. Because as far as I knew, this was just another birthday. Another simple, quiet evening surrounded by the people I trusted most. A safe world. A normal world. The last calm moment of my life before everything twisted into something I still struggle to describe. It started so small that I didn't even register it at first. Just a sound, a tiny soft tap, coming from somewhere down the hallway. At first, I thought it was my sister dropping something while moving decorations around. She's always knocking things over. But when I glanced over, she was right beside my mom, helping her slice fruit for the table. So the sound wasn't her. Still, it wasn't alarming. Just odd. A small isolated noise in a quiet house. The kind you shrug off without thinking too hard. But then it happened again. Tap. A little sharper this time. A little closer. Marcus paused his joke mid-sentence and glanced toward the hallway, eyebrows furrowed. "You guys hear that?" he asked. My dad waved it off immediately. House settling. Happens when the temperature drops. We all nodded because that explanation made sense, but something about it didn't sit right with me. I'd lived in that house for years. I knew every normal creak, moan, and sigh the place made. This sound wasn't familiar. It was too deliberate. I pushed the thought away. This was my birthday. I wasn't going to kill the mood by overthinking. But then the air changed. It wasn't dramatic. No sudden cold gust or flickering lights like in movies. It was more like the atmosphere thickened. Like the room grew heavier, even though the temperature stayed the same. I felt it settle across my shoulders and chest, subtle but undeniable. I glanced around the table. Everyone was still talking normally. No one looked uncomfortable. So why did I suddenly feel like someone unseen had stepped into the room? I sat up straighter, trying to shake the sensation, but it only grew stronger. My eyes kept drifting toward the dark hallway at the edge of the dining room. The shadows there looked deeper than they should have been. Not darker, just heavier. Like they were watching. And then came another sound. Not a tap this time. A slow dragging. Like something brushed against the floorboards. My breath hitched. That sounded inside. I whispered before I could stop myself. Lena turned toward me. What sounded inside? I didn't want to answer. Saying it aloud felt like inviting something to respond. But my dad broke in quickly. Probably the cat outside. He walks along the siding sometimes. We didn't have a cat. I looked at him, waiting for the joke, but his expression remained the same, calm, dismissive, rational. And maybe that would have calmed me too if not for the fact that everyone else heard it. Every single one of them had gone quiet. Then, as if the house wanted to remind us it existed, the kitchen light flickered. Just once. Barely noticeable. But enough to make Lena stop mid-step as she brought drinks to the table. Enough to make my mom's hand freeze over the cutting board. Enough to make my heart thump painfully hard in my chest. I tried to laugh it off. Old wiring. I said weakly. But even saying it felt wrong. Because the flicker didn't match the rhythm of a dying bulb. Felt purposeful. Timed. And then came the feeling, the unmistakable sensation of being watched. It crawled up the back of my neck like cold fingers. My skin prickled. My heartbeat quickened. I turned slowly toward the hallway again. The shadows hadn't moved. Nothing was there. But I swear, for a split second, I felt eyes staring directly at me from the dark. Not human eyes. Something quieter. More patient. I rubbed my arms, trying to shake the chill. My family kept chatting, but their voices sounded distant, like I was listening through thick glass. I felt disconnected, floating in a growing tension that no one else seemed fully aware of. Every few minutes I'd catch another tiny noise. Another tap, another brush, another shift in the air. And with each one the unease dug deeper. Something was wrong. Something was in my home. Something was waiting. And though nothing clearly dangerous had happened yet, I knew something was coming. The moment everything changed, the moment the fear stopped being imagination and became something real, was so quiet that, at first, I didn't even understand what I was looking at. It happened just as we were bringing out the birthday cake. The lights dimmed, not flickered, not sputtered, but dimmed, like someone was turning an invisible dial. The entire living room shifted from warm and bright to a dull, unnatural glow. Everyone froze, confused but trying not to overreact. My dad tapped the wall switch, but it didn't respond. My mom laughed nervously and tried to pretend it was funny. But it wasn't funny. The air felt wrong again. Heavy. Too still. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until I felt my chest burn. Lena whispered, "Why is it so quiet?" And that's when I noticed it. There was no sound. Not from outside. Not from the house settling. Not even from the wind outside the windows. Everything, every natural noise had stopped. The silence was absolute. My dad stepped toward the hallway, muttering something about checking the breaker. But the second he got within a few feet of the darkness, he stopped moving entirely. "Dad," I called. He didn't answer. He just stared into the hallway like he was frozen. Then he whispered, barely audible, "Someone's in there." My stomach dropped. Before anyone could react, the shadows in the hallway shifted. Not like something walked through them, no. They expanded, stretching wider, deeper, like darkness being poured across the floor. The shadows spread until they reached the edge of the dining room, stopping just short of the light. My dad stumbled backwards, almost tripping over the rug. "Everyone, stay back," he said, his voice trembling. I'd never heard him sound afraid. Ever. Then from the center of that thick, impossible darkness, two shapes appeared. First I thought they were eyes. But they weren't glowing. They weren't human. They were just voids. Two perfect, round holes in the darkness, darker than black. They didn't blink. They didn't move. They just opened like something was staring straight at us through the shadows. My mom grabbed my arm. "Don't move," she whispered. The cake knife in her hand shook violently. Then the figure stepped forward. I didn't see a body. No silhouette. No outline. Just a distortion like heat waves rising off asphalt, but blacker, heavier, forming a shape that didn't make sense. It stepped into the faint light and the bulbs instantly dimmed further, as if the thing absorbed brightness. The heaviness in the room intensified so sharply that everyone gasped at once. It felt like gravity increased, like something was squeezing the air out of our lungs. The thing tilted its head, slowly, unnaturally, and that tiny movement made my entire body freeze. Then it spoke. The voice didn't come from its mouth, if it even had one. Came from everywhere. A deep, layered whisper that vibrated in my bones. "You shouldn't have called me," Lena screamed. My mom pulled me behind her. My dad shoved the table forward as if it could stop whatever this was. But the table wasn't the barrier. The light was. Because the second the creature moved a step forward and its form brushed the edge of the light, the bulb above us exploded. Glass rained down. Everyone ducked. And the room plunged into almost total darkness. That's when I realized the horrifying truth. The thing wasn't trying to scare us. It wasn't stalking or observing or teasing. It was coming out, crossing fully into our world. And now, we had nowhere left to run. The moment the light exploded, everything fell into chaos. I didn't even feel myself stand. I just remember my legs moving before my brain could catch up. The room plunged into darkness thick enough to choke on. I could still hear glass raining down, the scraping of chairs, the frantic breathing of my family, and underneath it all, a sound so low and warped it made my spine arch. A gurgling exhale. Coming closer. "Run!" my dad shouted. I didn't need to be told twice. I grabbed Lena's arm, yanking her with me as we bolted toward the kitchen. The darkness behind us rippled, like someone dragging claws across wet fabric. Something moved fast. Too fast. We stumbled through the doorway just as a heavy thud shook the wall behind us. Something had hit it. Hard. "Don't stop, go!" Lena screamed. My mom fumbled for the kitchen light switch, but the bulb only flickered weakly, like it was dying from fear. A shadow spread across the floor, stretching toward us, somehow moving even though nothing else was. My dad grabbed a flashlight from the drawer and flicked it on, the beam cut through the dark, and the thing jerked back, its form snapping like a glitching image. But only for a second, because then the light in his hand flickered too. No, stay on, he muttered. I yanked open the back door and cold night air slammed into us. We sprinted out onto the deck, feet thundering against the wood. Snow crunched violently under our shoes as we fled, slipping down the steps into the backyard. The yard light buzzed overhead, flickering like it was struggling to stay alive. But it stayed on. Barely. "We have to get to the shed. There's another flashlight inside," my dad panted. The shed was only about 30 feet away, but right now it felt like an impossible distance. Shadows crawled along the house behind us, dragging themselves forward like hungry fingers. We ran. Halfway across the yard, Lena slipped on the ice and fell screaming. I spun back to grab her, but the shadow behind us wasn't on the ground anymore. It rose. Tall. Wrong. Stretching like a puppet being pulled upright. "Get her!" my mom screamed. I grabbed Lena under the arms, yanking her to her feet. She was sobbing but moving. We stumbled toward the shed while my dad fought to keep the flashlight pointed at the creature. Every time the beam touched it, the figure twisted violently, like the light burned it from the inside. But the flashlight was dimming, fading, dying. We reached the shed door. I shoved Lena through first. My mom ducked inside next. I spun around. The creature was only 10 feet away. Its face, or whatever it had, was splitting open, peeling like tearing fabric, revealing a swirling hollow void inside. The sound it made was a layered whisper that stabbed deep into my skull. The flashlight sputtered one last time. A weak glow. Flicker. Blackness. My dad screamed. "Shut the door." We slammed it shut, locked the latch, pushed toolboxes against the frame, pressed our bodies against it as something outside slammed into the wood, shaking the whole structure. Another slam. Harder. Then a dragging sound, like claws scraping along the wall. The temperature inside the shed plummeted. Every breath came out as a cloud. Lena whispered, "It's trying to get in. It's trying to get in." My dad tore open drawers, searching desperately. "Where's the spare light? Where?" Something pounded directly beside my ear. The wood cracked. A thin line split open. And through that tiny crack, I saw it. A single, unmoving black void staring in at me. No eyes. No face. Just a hole into something wrong. It whispered soft. Cold. Hungry. "I'm still here." And the shed shuddered as the creature prepared to break through. We had seconds. Maybe less. The shed stayed silent for a long time after the last impact. No breathing. No dragging. No whispering. Just silence so complete it felt unnatural. Like the world outside had paused and was waiting to see what we'd do next. None of us moved. None of us spoke. We were frozen in place, listening, afraid that even a breath too loud would bring that thing back. Minutes felt like hours. Then my dad whispered, "I think it's gone." But he didn't sound convinced. None of us were. The shed was still freezing, but at least whatever was outside wasn't hitting the walls anymore. My mom's hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold her phone as she tried to get a signal. But the screen only showed no service over and over again. "It's the storm, it has to be," she whispered. But the sky outside the tiny shed window wasn't storming anymore. The snow had stopped. The wind had died. Everything was still. Too still. Eventually, my dad found the backup flashlight buried in a drawer. When he switched it on, the inside of the shed lit up with a weak yellow glow, But for the first time in an hour, I felt a tiny drop of safety. We cleared the boxes away from the door slowly, like we were disarming a bomb. My dad unlatched the lock with trembling fingers. He pushed the door open an inch, then another, then enough to poke the flashlight through the gap. Nothing. He pushed it open all the way. The yard looked normal. Snow-covered. Quiet. Peaceful. But something had changed. The footprints we'd left running to the shed were still there. Mine, Lena's, my parents'. For sets, clear in the snow. But next to them, overlapping them, walking perfectly in step with them, were another set. Not footprints. Indentations. Long, deep. Like something with too many limbs had pressed its weight into the snow without fully touching it. They followed our path exactly to the shed door. And then nothing. No prints leading away. No disturbance in the snow. It was as if the thing simply stopped existing the moment it reached us. Or as if it was still here but hidden. "We're leaving," my dad said. "Right now." We rushed back into the house, grabbing whatever we could carry. The power was still out, but the interior didn't feel as suffocating as before. The living room was quiet. The birthday decorations were still scattered across the floor. The table was overturned. Broken plates everywhere. But there was something else. On the far wall, above the light switch that had blown, something had been carved into the wood. 4 thin vertical slashes. Perfectly straight. Perfectly spaced. Like fingers. Or claws. Fresh. Deep. Still dripping with melted snow. "Did that happen when the lights went out?" Lena whispered. My dad shook his head, pale as paper. "No. That wasn't there before. We left the house that night and didn't return for days. When we finally did, the snow had melted enough that the strange indentations were gone. No proof. No tracks. No signs of anything unnatural. Even the carved slashes looked faded, like they'd been there for years. Like the wood had aged around them." The police shrugged. The neighbors thought we were hysterical. The reports were filed, then forgotten. But I can't forget. Because last night, while lying in bed, lights off, phone charging across the room, I heard the same soft whisper I heard in the shed. A slow, dragging breath. Right next to my ear. And when I turned on the lamp, the room was empty. Except for one thing. 4 fresh slashes carved into the wall beside my bed. Still wet. Still dripping. Still warm. And I know it's not finished yet.